Welcome to the Bean Pod, a podcast about decentralized finance and the Beanstalk protocol. I'm your host, Rex. Before we get started, we always want to remind everyone that on this podcast, we are very optimistic about decentralized finance in general and Beanstalk in particular. With that being said, 3 things. First, always do your own research before you invest in anything, especially what we talk about here on the show. Second, while you're doing that research, try to find as many well-developed, opposing viewpoints as possible to get the best overall picture. And third, never ever invest money that you can't afford to lose or at least be without for a while. And with that, on with the show. The development of smart contracts has opened up an entirely new universe of functionality on blockchains. These smart contracts are really the reason that decentralized finance can take place at all. They allow for automatic executions that don't require outside parties or human validators, making the process efficient and trustless. Developing and working on smart contracts, however, isn't without challenge. As contracts become larger and more complex, staying within technical constraints like contract size limit is more difficult. Additionally, fixing problems and making improvements to large contracts is challenging, a process that can be improved by modularizing the contracts and being able to make adjustments to individual components. In 2018, a Solidity developer named Nick Mudge was facing just such difficulties. In response, he developed EIP 2535, or what's now known as the Diamond Standard. Processes written using the Diamond Standard externally appear to be a single smart contract. However, beneath that single address can lie a number of other contracts called facets, each of which can have their own requirements and functionality. Now, a week before the governance exploit in April, Publius and I had the opportunity to interview Nick for the podcast. Because of the attack that happened just a few days later, this episode was set aside, but we loved talking with Nick and are excited to release that interview now. Also, one more quick item of note. During this episode, you'll hear multiple Publius, and because it was recorded before the exploit and their subsequent self-doxing, you'll be hearing them using their voice modulators. So for those of you who miss their old school robot voices, you're in for a treat, and we hope you enjoy it. Publius, welcome as always.
Thank you, Rex. Really looking forward to having a conversation with Nick today and exploring the EIP 2535 standard.
And Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
To start us off, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in software development. I did that for many years. And then in 2018, I got into Solidity development and smart contract development and NFTs and DeFi stuff and just made stuff. I have worked on projects and then worked on the Diamond Standard.
Sounds great. And so, for what it's worth, could you explain the Diamond Standard to me? Could you give me that ELI 5 explanation or ELI 5 explanation of the Diamond Standard?
Sure, I'll try to do that. It can be sort of used for different things, but so I'll sort of talk about the common case that I see, or the common cases for it. Essentially, it's a smart contract pattern or architecture that is used to solve certain problems and make certain things easier. So specifically, when you deploy a smart contract, there's a limit of how much functionality that contract can have. So if you deploy an NFT, okay, you can do a bunch of stuff, but then that's it. And then you have to deploy another contract, which is fine. But in some cases, you may want to deploy something and then, or you might want to deploy something large, but it's that one contract. And so the Diamond enables you to do that. So you can essentially have one contract with unlimited amount of functionality in that one contract. And then so that provides some benefits, like if you're going to make a user interface, it's easier for a user interface to connect to one contract rather than 5 different ones, for example. Or, if you're going to be interacting with, having other systems interact with you, if you can provide them one contract address, that's easier than more. So that's an example. It provides Another aspect that's used is some projects they might want to launch their project and get it in production and get going. And however, they want to initially build something useful, but it's not everything that they want to do. Like they want to launch and get user feedback and experience what their project is like, and then then later they realize they want to expand their system. There's features that their users are asking for, etc. So the Diamond provides a standard way to upgrade a smart contract system over time, and it can grow as large as needed. So whereas if you just there are upgradable contracts, but typically other upgradable contracts, again, they run into a size limit. You can have one contract, you can upgrade it to add more functionality, but then there's a limit of how big it can get. And so those are a couple of things. It also adds some transparency into it, so that if you do make a Diamond that's upgradable, there's an event that gets emitted, a standard event that keeps track of what's been changed, and so then external people can have that chance to look at, to see what's that it's transparent. You can see how it's upgraded over time.
So, Nick, it sounds like, based on the functionality and, the kind of dynamic nature of the Diamond standard, it sounds like you were trying to solve a specific problem. Was there a specific instance or something that you were working on at the time that kind of presented itself and showed the need for this greater flexibility in terms of updates and this ability to manage contract size?
Yeah, so in 2018, I was working on another standard called ERC 998, and this is the idea of an NFT owning another NFT, or owning ERC20 tokens and being able to control it. And developing that standard, I implemented a reference implementation, and I made my own project. It's called mokins.io, and it's still out there on the internet. But these mokins were NFTs that could own other NFTs, other ERC721s, and can own ERC20s. You can transfer these things into mokins and out of them, and things like that. So anyways, when I was implementing that, I ran into the maximum contract size limit of a contract. I had this mokins and this NFT contract. I was implementing the standard for NFTs at the time, 721. I was doing the composable stuff, the ERC 998, and I was also adding some custom functionality, and it just got too big. And so then at that time, I started looking for solutions to, in this case, having an NFT, it didn't make sense to have multiple contracts for an NFT. I wanted my NFT to exist in one contract, and its functionality to exist in one contract. So that's really when the problem presented itself, when I looked around and looked for solutions, and then I started working on that problem. And then also in 2018, I released an early version of the Diamond standard. It had a different name. It was an earlier iteration of it, and that later got replaced by what we have now, the Diamond standard. But so I started working the problem in 2018, and got feedback from people in the space, and got experience with it. And so really when the Diamond standard was that standard was first released in 2020, there was already been I'd already been thinking about it for 2 years and working with it and dealing with it. There's a couple projects at least that had the earlier standard in production. But also, so that originally was to solve that max contract size limit, so you could have a contract with unlimited functionality. But then there were other use cases that I found out about that were useful. Like, for example, it provided a code structure, a way to struct. If you have a lot of smart contract functionality, it provides a structure that's that's pretty applicable to a lot of domains. You could create DeFi systems. It's a way to organize your code with how the smart contracts work and how the EVM works and things like that. So it provides that as well, which is what I find useful.
So it sounds like you're originally looking at contract size, managing contract size, adding functionality, and it almost sounds like that ability to work in multiple facets was kind of an incidental or unexpected opportunity that you discovered. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. We found that you could put common functionality into a single faucet and really organize your code base that way, where common functionality goes together. And so yeah, you have this nice separation of things, and then a way to share data between them as part of that. So.
Is there anything else that, like, through that process that you either, kind of change your approach about the problem you're trying to solve, or on the other hand, change your understanding of like the Ethereum source code through the development process?
Well, I'd say that before the Diamond Standard, I really didn't use Solidity libraries. Um, I just didn't really have that much need for them. But I found that Solidity libraries work very well with a Diamond. Specifically, internal functions of Solidity libraries. This was because you can write a Solidity library, with a bunch of functionality once, and then for different faucets of the Diamond, you can import that library and reuse it. So that was found to be pretty useful as a sharing mechanism. Also, I think it's around sometime in 2020 or so, there was a change to the Solidity compiler, which made a new way to store data in contracts possible, which is now commonly called the diamond storage, where it enabled you to choose where to store data in a contract. Anyways, it turned out to be very useful for these proxy contracts and for the diamond, and anyways, that helped with the code organization and things like that. So using Solidity libraries and the diamond storage were both very useful for diamonds, and I think for proxy contracts in general.
It's really interesting. So, next question I have really is, I'm going to throw it to Publius first, and then Nick, we'll see if you have any additional thoughts. So, when we think about Beanstalk protocol, Publius, why does it matter that Beanstalk uses the diamond standard? How does that affect user experience, improve functionality, etc.?
Great question. So, a lot of it kind of stems from things Nick said earlier, specifically, things like the fact that facets can share functionality through libraries, and the fact that, Beanstalk truly is just one contract. In earlier iterations of Beanstalk, before we were fortunate enough to kind of discover and use the Diamond standard, Beanstalk was a collection of separate contracts, which is fairly standard for large protocols. And all of these cross-contract calls between these different contracts costs some, amount of gas. And that amount of gas is non-significant. And Beanstalk, with all its different interoperable parts, has a lot of cross-contract functionality. So with the Diamond standard, we can move that cross-contract functionality to these libraries such that each facet can individually include all the functionality while being able to code it in a clean and readable manner, instead of having to make these cross-contract calls, which, add significant gas overhead. Secondly, the Beanstalk contract has just one address. For any user that's trying to interact with Beanstalk or build some kind of protocol on top of Beanstalk, it's very easy for them to just attach the Beanstalk ABI, which is the interface through which you interact with Beanstalk, to the Beanstalk contract address, and then instantly be able to access all of Beanstalk's functionality. If Beanstalk was, say, 5, 6 different contracts, users would have to independently attach the ABI of each specific contract to each address. And, that can kind of become a mess and get very confusing. Thirdly, from a development perspective, upgradability with the Diamond standard is incredibly easy and straightforward. This has allowed us to kind of develop faster and be able to be confident with BIPs. And anytime we deploy upgrades, kind of really understand and feel comfortable that all the functionality is going to change as we expected. Upgradability across multiple contracts becomes kind of, a bigger, more challenging problem to make sure all the contracts references to each other are updated. And with the Diamond standard, this problem is completely alleviated.
There's also the thing where if you have an upgradable contract and it's large and you want to make a small change to it, then with a typical upgrade, you have to redeploy the whole thing, which can with a diamond you can just deploy just that function or just that set of functionality, and not everything. So that's a nice thing.
Yeah, as a non-technical expert, what I hear is that ability to utilize kind of this modular setup to make changes or improvements, bug fixes, etc., in a way that A gives the developers kind of a smaller package to work inside of, and B sounds like it can be managed somewhat separate from the core functionality. You're not necessarily putting other components at risk or potentially adding complexity where you don't need to in terms of having to redeploy an entire protocol.
Yes, yes. Every case is sort of it's case by case. In that, I think in some cases, some upgrades you might upgrade something and that upgrade just touches a very small amount, and so it's easy to think with. And then other grade, it really depends case by case. Like some upgrades might be, touching different data that's used different places. So, but it is true that the diamond on the upgrade thing, it does help separate different parts that are going on, so you can think on a smaller basis to some degree when you're doing upgrades, which is helpful.
So we talked through kind of a couple really key functions of the diamond standard. If Nick, if you were pitching this idea to a developer, besides the contract size management and the modular capability of the faucets, are there any other features or components that you would want to say, hey, don't forget about this? This standard can do this other thing too.
Yeah, so there's a lot of aspects to it, and I sometimes forget about parts of it and wish I said, "Hey, what about that?" And might do that here. I mean, one other aspect is that, um, with the diamond, it's really an architecture that's pretty general purpose to solve. I wouldn't say any problem, but a lot of problems, a lot of things. You can implement DeFi protocols, NFT systems, integrations with things, and so but as I said, it provides this common structure, this common way of thinking that's workable. And so what's useful about that is that you may develop the system, have a couple of developers, and it's good for if you're going to hire future developers. Now they have to get familiar with their system. If it's a diamond, there's already lots of documentation about how diamonds work, so there's material they can study. And then if they're already familiar with the diamond architecture, that pattern and so on, it'll be a lot faster for them to come up to speed with your system. Because there's a problem if there's a project and they do a completely custom system and it's like completely done their own way, if they hire anybody, that they have this time where they have to come up to speed with it and become familiar. So the diamond sort of documents. If you do a diamond, your system's already halfway documented for you with how the diamond works. So there's that kind of benefit there. And then let's see. I mean, I'm sure there's other things. There's tooling is a thing where there's a website called looper.dev, which if you put in a diamond address, it will show you all the faucets and all the functions and of any diamond, and then you can call the functions on there. There's already some tooling, like people have made tools specifically for diamonds, and I see that is coming more in the future where there'll just be like integrations and things that work with diamonds because it's a standard.
Nice. So Next question is more directed at Publius. Um, Beyond the functionality that we've already talked about a little bit up to this point, was there anything else that drew you to implement Beanstalk as a diamond? And right along with that, like let's say that we were able to, hop in our time machine and head back to, you know, let's say Thanksgiving, 2 Thanksgivings ago. Would you approach that implementation differently?
So, Nick, it's funny to hear about your experience with, kind of the contract size limit. And it seems like, every Solidity developer has that experience where, they're building their first large protocol and they're just developing. And then suddenly they're like, see that error, contract size limit reached, contract too big. And, you're a little bit like, what's going on here? Like, it's not a problem that you run into very much in, other disciplines of computer science, but it is one that, you don't really realize is a thing, but is really influential in how it has kind of shaped the direction in which smart contracts have headed. And, kind of got to the point where, we were, working on dividing Beanstalk, figuring out how we architect it, while also figuring out how to, make it fully upgradable from a governance perspective. And, was reading a number of articles and landed upon, one of Nick's blog posts about EIP 2535. Very soon dove into it and, read up more about how it allowed you to, divide up functionality by faucets while kind of maintaining the same contract. And to Nick's kind of point about how it's kind of one generalized purpose solution to all kinds of protocols, the more we kind of said, oh, well, can you do this? For instance, state management. Within contracts, obviously, they need to manage states, the balances of users, the state of the system, in Beanstalk, the season number, the weather, the pods, the number of stock, etc. And, the diamond storage makes it very easy to share that state across different facets. Where if Beanstalk were broken up, the field facet would have to call the season facet to get the season number, which is a cross-contract call just to access a state variable. But within the diamond architecture, you can just define one state, add that state to all the facets, and then boom, all of the facets are sharing state variables and can share functionality through libraries. And kind of once you get over that initial kind of learning curve of, okay, this is what a diamond is, how do we use it? And to which, Nick, just have to say your documentation is impeccable. It's truly world class. And, it's funny because the deeper we dove into diamonds, the more it was like, okay, is this possible with diamonds? And it's like, oh, just look on Nick's blog. He's got a whole article about it. So, kudos to you for really firing away on that and, making it very easy for us to use. And, kind of once you wrap your head around the diamond, you're like, I don't even want to go back. I don't ever want to have to try to, break apart a smart contract into multiple contracts. And, kind of over the course of the last few months, we've onboarded a number of developers onto the Beanstalk Farms backend dev team. And, at first glance, they're kind of always like, what is happening here? And then, we always check in with them, a week or two later and we're like, just curious, what are your thoughts on the diamond? And, they all kind of have nothing but, astounding good things to say. So, it truly is a better development experience. It helps us stay more organized. It makes it easier to deploy upgrades, like we said. And, how easy it is to deploy upgrades, allowed us to facilitate, upgrades via governance in the base functionality of Beanstalk. Upgradability completely in a decentralized fashion is something some protocols struggle a lot with, but we were fortunate enough to just have the ability to just call these diamond cuts. And, to Nick's point earlier, the tooling around it is incredible. In this diamond repo, there's just a deploy script and you just enter the facets you want to add and boom, it deploys the facets, submits the upgrade request and, that's that. So, truly from an efficient development perspective and providing our users the best user experience and cheapest user experience from a gas perspective, we believe that, the diamond is at the forefront and, never want to go back.
That's really awesome. And I really appreciate you saying it. I'm really glad to hear that. I always really like it when, when I put out some stuff out there and then, there's some people that really get it and they run with it. And And so, and I'm very happy to see that. And so, thank you.
If there's one thing that I never get sick of, it is listening to Publius absolutely geek out. Like in for both Publius, I can hear that in both of your voices, and it always makes me smile. I always get to hear that. So I'm sure they will edit that out. That's just fine. Um, so Nick, when you look at the broader Ethereum ecosystem, what are some of the projects or integrations of the Diamond Standard that you've seen since implementation that you look at and you're like, wow, that is so clever, or wow, I hadn't even thought of, that particular use case. Can you walk us through a couple examples that have really caught your eye?
I'll just say that one of the things I'm looking forward to is there's another aspect of this diamond thing is this idea of reusable deployed faucets where you deploy a faucet and it can be done in such a way where the faucet is reusable. That means that you know someone can have a diamond and they can add functions from the faucet to the diamond, and someone else can have another diamond and they can use that same on-chain faucet that's already been deployed in their diamond. And so I'm seeing this a little bit already where some projects internally where they want to be able to deploy different diamonds and they're just reusing already deployed faucets that they've created and they're just doing this internally for their project. But I see a future where you basically have a deployed faucet library, um, and you know where it's this is because right now we're used to Solidity libraries, or smart contract libraries like Open Zeppelin, where it's we have the code and we just were reusing the code. But I'm excited about this idea of projects starting to deploy their faucets on chain and offering them as an on chain library for people's diamonds. And this is kind of I heard someone. Well, I guess this is an example. I heard someone call it plugins for smart contracts recently, and I thought, oh yeah, it's a plug-in systems for smart contract. You have a diamond, and then you can plug in different contracts into your diamond to provide it functionality. So I'm looking forward to that. That's something that I see a little bit of, and I'm not surprised I'll see more of. But it'll be a good use case for diamonds as well. I don't know any other architecture really where you can do that other than I guess so with external functions with Solidity libraries. But anyway, so that's something. I do see people doing things. I really tend to more respect and admire the projects that have taken the diamond and have done a good job with it. And like Beanstalk and there's some others. And as far as helping the diamond standard, that's one of the best things that a project can do is use it and be successful. And I love to see that.
That notion you mentioned, Nick, of kind of on-chain facet composability is super awesome. Can totally see a future in which it's like you deploy a diamond. Oh, you want a governance system? Implement this governance facet. You want ERC20 function, token functionality? Implement this default ERC20 token facet. You want staking functionality? Add this staking facet. And that way contracts can compose themselves of even already audited on-chain code, which will make it a lot easier for, contracts to guarantee security and, hopefully will lead to a lot less bugs and, just general optimized contracts across all of Ethereum. So love that idea.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Publius. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I was thinking as Nick was talking. First of all, the term that ran through my head was plug and play. So plugins right along with it, and then yeah, Publius, you just hit it. That idea that in the future you'll be able to move past concerns about code or technical components, and developers or teams will be able to think much more dynamically about like what are they actually trying to do, and not get as hung up or concerned about, well, is there, are we going to do some type of code implementation that's going to have some nascent issue that we're not expecting. You can focus much more on what the functionality and what the overall project goal is. So, kind of right along with that, Nick, um, is there anything else that you see as you kind of look out on the horizon when it comes to potential uses for the standard? Anything besides the examples you just mentioned that you think, theoretically somebody could do X, Y, or Z?
I think that there could be new standards which are extensions to the EIP 2535 Diamond standard, uh, like people might have ideas to do. Sometimes people have other ideas of what could be done with it, and I think those are all great. And some of those might make sense to be a standard, and I don't really have that much in my mind right now. I just think that there's a possibility for standards that build on top of the Diamond standard. Even this, we're talking about this plugins. There could be standards there, as far as a standard for module faucets is like how you the standards for how's the data going to be stored in these modular in these these reusable faucets. So I think there could be more standards. Another area is in upgrades. Like the standard is pretty flexible in upgrades. It provides a standard function, but it's optional, and it also says that that projects can create their own upgrade functions to better suit them. So you don't just have to use the one in the standard. So like maybe there could be more creative upgrade. It also doesn't the standard doesn't limit like who can do upgrades. Like the reference implementation has like a contract owner. Only the contract owner can do upgrades, but that the standard doesn't limit that. You could make it so that people can vote, and upgrades only happen based on-chain voting, or something like that, or some government systems can be built on top of the Diamond.
Very cool.
And it still feels very early days, to the point where we're still trying to learn every way we can take advantage of this wonderful standard that you've created, Nick. And think we got to figure out how we can most effectively use the existing Diamond standard. And once we figure that out, I'm sure we'll come up with ways in which we can improve upon it. But there really is just so much. It's just such a generalized model that there are so many possibilities that suddenly just become so simple through this simple interface. And kind of the whole diamond cut structure, the ability to just have a general agreed upon way to upgrade contracts with a rule set is just truly incredible.
And I find it useful to exactly what you're kind of saying, of general a general rules or approach to the upgrade and the organization that then can be applied to many different projects. It just and then people kind of agreeing to that approach then just makes it easier for communication about projects, to getting started on projects, and understanding them. Because there's someone else starts a diamond based project, and you have to learn that project. You already know diamonds, then you already understand its architecture, and you understand how it's organized, and now you just need to know the nuances of its domain, of like what's it doing for its specific domain. So anyway, so that's all useful. Yeah. And I thought about that too, because there's some L2 EVM solutions that don't have a max contract size, and so that's a question: should you use the Diamond in an EVM environment that doesn't have a max? And I'd still use it. I'd use it for it provides this organizational strategy that can grow, and so I would still use it even without max contracts. Even though that was initially why it was created and solves that problem, I think the organization that it provides, its approach, is valuable just by itself. And so I would still use it for that. Oh, another thing, and this hasn't been explored that I've seen. Typically, contracts that you deploy, you cannot query a smart contract for all the functions it has. I can't have one contract on chain ask another contract, what functions do you have, or do you have this function? There is a standard for like interfaces, like do you support this contract interface or not, which is useful. but you can't ask a contract, what are all the functions you have? And do you have this specific function? Do you have this specific function? But with a diamond, you can do that where, you can query one contract can ask another diamond, give me all your functions, and then you can do something. And so that's possible to process the functions of a diamond on chain. And I've never seen anybody do that. I don't, it just hasn't been explored. Maybe there's something useful there. I don't know, but that's something someone can explore. Possibly you can create maybe more kind of systems that manage systems. Like diamonds kind of could create more of this automation of smart contracts. Which, one thing I've thought about, Ethereum limits what you can do because of gas costs, but in the future there's going to be there's environments where gas costs are not such a problem. We've seen that on some of these other blockchains like Polygon, where it's a lot cheaper, you can do more on chain. And I think with some of the L2 solutions and future options, you'll be able to create even larger systems that do processing on chain that you couldn't otherwise do. So, and diamonds again may have some interesting use cases there.
So to turn that question on its ear just a little bit, is there anything that the Beanstalk community could be doing to help support the diamond standard, or anything else that you're working on?
I think maybe I'm not really sure. We talked about creating a foundation that supports projects that are using the diamond and support more tooling and that sort of thing. Maybe, but I think I think just growing and expanding, building a system with EIP 25, 35 diamonds, and building a good system that grows and is successful. That helps it a lot. That's successful adoption helps the standard. So of course that helps, and potentially other things. I think, inviting me on this podcast, I appreciate that, and that helps too.
It's definitely a pleasure. Speaking of, so what else are you working on? What are the projects that you're spending time on right now, and developing, things that you feel comfortable sharing publicly, of course?
Yeah, so recently I've been involved in the smart contract security auditing, where just people have asked me to do that, and so I've done that. Some code reviews. I'm an advisor for some projects, just strictly on smart contract technical advisor. So so I've been helping some projects on smart contract technical stuff, and then I'm in the Discord for Diamonds, answering people's questions sometimes, and just around, and yeah.
Sure. So again, as you look more broadly, we've talked about things that might be happening in the future in terms of diamond usage itself. Take a step further back. Are there any particular new technologies that you see, in the crypto space or in blockchain more broadly, that you look at and think, wow, that's really interesting. That's something that could really change how certain environments work or how certain problems are solved?
I'd say with the EVM stuff, not so much. I mean, just working with it, but I've been looking into virtual reality stuff recently, and I mean, this is kind of a higher level thing. I really do see how blockchain, which secures ownership of things, really seems to work really well with virtual reality type metaverses, where people will want to own objects and things in virtual reality, and how blockchain can secure that. So I think that's going to be an exciting thing in the future. I'm really into, since 2017, 2018, really interested in the idea of blockchain securing and transferring ownership of digital things, physical things, and so on. I've been involved to some degree with a project called Boson Protocol, which allows you to buy and trade things with crypto, but are physical. And like go into metaverses where you can like buy and trade physical things inside metaverses. So anyways, I think But so just in general, I'm interested in all these different ways ownership is secured with blockchain. I guess is my main interest. And then there's all these L2s. I probably should explore more of the different L2 solutions. I have some, but I think it's good.
Very cool. So, how can our listeners learn more about the Diamond Standard and follow your work?
Yeah, sure. So there is a blog or a website that I wrote a bunch of stuff. It's EIP 2535diamonds.substack.com, or you can just probably find it by searching EIP 2535 diamonds. So there's some blog posts that I've written because what's happened is, people ask me questions or they say things, and if I see it 2 or 3 times, then I go, oh, this is important enough to write a blog post about it, that kind of thing, or just I just keep writing things that I feel will help people. So let's see. There's the standard itself, which has a lot of useful information in it, and also has links in the reference section to learn more. And then there's like the projects just different projects that are implementing the diamonds. I think they tend to create their own material about the diamond and how they're using it, and provide examples of how things are done, which I think is useful.
Good stuff. All right, to kind of finish us out, we'll just ask if anybody has any closing thoughts. And actually, I'll start with you, Nick, and then I'll turn it over to Publius to let them round us out.
Yeah, sure. One of the common problems with the diamond, well, not problems, but things that comes up is people they're used to Open Zeppelin smart contracts, and Open Zeppelin's, like their Solidity library stuff in Open Zeppelin works with their diamonds because it doesn't have to do with modifying state variables. But Open Zeppelin's smart contract implementations like ERC721, ERC20, those implementations, they don't work with diamonds. Like, you can't take Open Zeppelin's ERC721 NFT contract and use it with a diamond, because with diamonds you have to organize your state variables a certain way to make it all work well, and that way is commonly called diamond storage. There's another way called app storage, which is similar. And all right, so anyway, so that problem's coming up with Open Zeppelin. Open Zeppelin, they have an upgradable version of their contracts, and they also, because upgradable contracts in general need a way to manage state across upgrades. And so Open Zeppelin has a way of doing that for the upgradable contracts. It's called their gap. They use these gaps in storage space to have future room for new state variables. And but one of the lead developers says is that for their next major release of Open Zeppelin, they're looking to use diamond storage for the upgradable versions of Open Zeppelin, which is because they see that it's a better than what they're doing. But that's exciting too, because that means that if they do that, which I hope they do, that in their next major release, then their implementations of smart contracts will be able to work in diamonds. So that's something hopefully happens. Oh, but I should say there is someone who has ported or Open Zeppelin's smart contracts to use diamond storage, so that they can be used in diamonds. There's also another smart contract library out there that has implementations of like ERC721 and ERC20 and other things. So in other words, there's already solutions for common things to work in diamonds, but I think it'll just get better.
Nice. Publius, anything to add as we finish out?
Just want to, first off say congratulations, Nick. That's a real accomplishment to, be able to get on Open Zeppelin's radar. And, just want to overall say thank you so much for taking the time to come on this podcast. We've spent so much time working with, the EIP 2535 standard, which you created, and, have spent so long, working with your work, and I've never really got a chance to have a conversation with you. So, I'm truly honored to be able to have this chat. Also, thank you for all of the great things you said today. Really opening up kind of and explaining what the possibilities are for EIP 2535 going forward. And, just if anything comes up, any way we can help support, the effort to, get EIP 2535 out there, please let us know. And, as we're big fans. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. I'm grateful for you too. I've been watching the project, and it looks like it's going really well, and I'm really happy to see it go along. And thank you for looking at the standard and giving it a try, and I appreciate that.